There's always sort of a pendulum swing between ad-supported media and directly monetized media. And we've seen this across video and also in other parts like, news and other parts of the sort of digital media ecosystem.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, October 7th. Paul and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by our principal analyst who covers TV and video and heads up our advertising and media practice. It's Paul Verna.
Hey, great to be here.
Hey chap, thanks for hanging out. Today's fact: nautical mile speed, the speed of boats, is measured by knots because they use knots to measure it. So the term knot, K-N-O-T, dates from the 17th century when sailors measured the speed of their ship using a device called a common log. So it's a bit of wood basically tied to a rope with knots tied in the rope at regular intervals. So at one end there's a bit of wood, and then throughout the rope there's different knots tied at regular intervals. Mariners would lower the wood piece into the water and allow it to float behind the ship for a certain amount of time, often measured with an hourglass, and so the wood stays roughly where you drop it, and the rope uncoils off the back of the ship into the water, and as the ship moves forwards, when the time was up, they would then count the number of knots between the ship and the piece of wood, and that number would estimate their speed. It's both brilliant and ridiculous at the same time.
It sounds very convoluted.
What's the distance between these knots? Well, everyone should be doing it differently.
Yeah, no, it's definitely complicated, but I can't say I have a better way of doing it.
Miles per hour, that's a better way of doing it.
Yes,
if you're wondering how fast 10 miles per hour would be in knots, it's about 10. So who knows why we're still using knots when in miles per hour is basically the same.
Well, thank you for teaching us something, Marcus, because I had no idea where that term came from, and now I know. But I think it sets you up for the natural challenge of, on the next episode, you're going to have to describe leagues and what those are.
Leagues?
Like 20,000 leagues under the sea.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I just wrap my head around knots. I can't deal with leagues. Boat people, man. So fancy. All right, today's real topic: ad-supported video on demand's rapid emergence. So, Paul, we're talking all about AVOD services, advertising, video on demand services, ad-supported video on demand services, AVOD services, whatever flavor of that title you'd like to use. Recent Adweek Morning Consult poll found that while nearly 40% of US adults, 40, subscribed to more streaming services during the pandemic, most, 64%, have no intention of adding more in the next year. In fact, 16% plan to cancel some, notes former Insider Intelligence analyst Mario Soto Reyes. Folks are increasingly favoring TV services that are free, with ads, 41%, versus paid ad-free options, 33%, according to Hub Research from June 2021. So who are these ad-supported video-on-demand platforms, AVOD platforms? Let's meet them. Horowitz research suggests that 48% of Americans watch the AVOD services like Roku. 29% watch these fast services or these linear, free, ad-supported streaming TV services. They're called fast services. That's 29% of people. 23% of people pirate this type of content using software and non-official sites, and 19% have a TV everywhere service. So to break that down for you a bit more, AVOD services that folks use to watch TV content, according to this Horowitz research: YouTube 29%, Roku 16%, IMDb TV 12, Crackle 11, Vudu 10. Some of these you may have or have used before. The fast services that they include are Pluto TV and Tubi, each with 16% of TV viewers watching them. And then free cast services like Distro TV 5%, Lowcast 4%, and Zumo 3%. Paul, a ton of different services here. For some reason, they're broken down into two separate categories, even though they're both ad-supported. What is the difference, in our opinion, between AVOD services and the fast ones, and how do we actually categorize all of these?
Before I break down those definitions, let me just put a word in about these acronyms: AVOD, FAST, SVOD, VMVPD. I hate every single one of them with a burning passion. So I'm just going to come right out and say that. OTT, they're all horrendous. Okay, so I will probably use them because the industry uses them and I don't really have a choice. We've tried at eMarketer to introduce our own terms and we just didn't get that far. You know, people didn't really take us up on it. With that out of the way, let me just say AVOD and FAST, the difference there is really the live aspect, where FAST services are basically TV channels or TV bundles of content that's delivered live, whereas AVOD is on demand. That's built into that acronym. So it's content that you watch on demand. It's not really a live streaming channel. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference between them. But in every other respect, they're similar in that they're ad supported. And when we measure AVOD viewers, for example, we do include services like Tubi, which are part of this sort of FAST group. So there's definitely some crossover here and not a lot of unanimity across the industry as to, whether there should be two distinct groups or whether it's one group with two subsets.
So Nielsen says streaming across all TV homes now has a 26% share of total day usage of a TV. But streaming ad-supported platforms only make up 4% share. However, Future Today and Variety Intelligence research shows that of the 4 hours that folks stream each week, AVOD accounted for 32%, SVOD for 29%, and FAST for 24%. So seems to be some conflicting numbers about the significance of advertising-supported video on demand at this point, Paul. What's your take on where AVOD viewing is at today?
Well, my take is that AVOD is increasing quite rapidly, and I think there are some interesting reasons behind it. One is that there have been a lot of new, or when I say new, I mean like in the past 12 to 18 months, subscription-based services. Some of them are quite pricey, and there's a glut of them. A lot of them came into the market all at once. And the surge in AVOD viewership is partly a backlash to the subscription creep that we're seeing. I think also there have been more services that are delivering this content as well on the AVOD side. So there's always sort of a pendulum swing between ad-supported media and directly monetized media. And we've seen this across video and also in other parts like, news and other parts of the sort of digital media ecosystem. And really, I think what we're seeing now is people are watching their wallets. They're seeing that, they're paying for all these different services. Some of that was because the pandemic forced them to, stay at home and spend more time. Well, didn't force them to spend more time watching TV, but that's what people ended up doing. And they gravitated toward platforms like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. So I think now there's kind of, a swing the other way where people realize, hey, we're spending a lot of money. Also, some of the subscription-based services have increased. Most of them have increased their prices. So it's not just that there are a lot of them and the people subscribe to more and more of them, but they're spending more on them as well. So that all leads people to this place where, the ad-supported media looks more and more appealing.
Yeah, money, the cost factor is definitely important here. Nearly 60% of people would switch to an ad-supported platform if they could save between $4 to $5 a month, according to Hub Research. And 51% of Americans would prefer using ad-supported video services to reduce costs, according to Future Today and Variety's Variety Intelligence platform, VIP+. And Wayne Friedman of MediaPost notes that when asked if Netflix offered a new ad-supported tier with pre-roll ads, 54% said they'd rather keep their ad-free plan, but 46%, a lot of folks, said that they would switch. More folks, Paul, also said that they would decrease their paid subscriptions than increase them. I think it was about 36 to about 23% of people favoring to decrease than increase. But it doesn't seem like people are decreasing in favor of increasing the ad-supported ones, it seems as though people have kind of reached their limit in terms of how much they're willing to pay. And as opposed to adding new services, they're tacking on these ad-supported services. 25% of US internet users now rely on a mix of AVOD and SVOD services for their entertainment, according to Ampere Analysis. That figure is up from 15% in Q1 2020. So from 15 to 25% in terms of people relying on a mix of the two. The share of folks who said they just use AVOD services went from 2% to 3% in the past year. So we're seeing a mix of the two. We're not seeing people favor one over the other. And it seems as though people, they just don't mind seeing ads. It's funny, I think I was talking about this with Peter Varley, one of our senior forecasting analysts, yesterday after the show, about how people doing old things in new ways. And we're kind of reverting back to, with this, it seems people don't mind seeing ads when they're watching TV if it means the cost can come down. The share of people who said they don't mind seeing ads when watching TV reached 46% in Q1 of this year, up from 37% nearly 3 years ago. Again, that also from Ampere. But we have some new AVOD numbers that Nazmul Islam on our forecasting team was working on. I'm wondering what you make of these. So we've got 128 million, basically, AVOD viewers in 2021. That was up 18% on last year, and it will grow to close to 140 million by next year. So 2022, 140 million. That's good enough for 42% of the population. And by 2025, it's getting to half of the population, nearly 48% of people being AVOD viewers by 2025. Your thoughts on these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, it's significant growth. You know, we're seeing double-digit growth every year through this year. I mean, you know, because the base is larger, that growth will taper off on a year-to-year basis, but it's still a lot of growth when you look at the aggregate. I mean, in 2019, there were some, 83 plus million. And as you said, by 2023, there'll be 150. So that's close to a doubling in that period of 4 years. So That's part of what I was talking about earlier, just about how there's a surge in this kind of viewing. And, I think it's driven by a lot of these trends we've been talking about.
Yeah. 25% of people, a quarter of people were AVOD viewers in America in 2019. By 2025, 6 years later, nearly half will be. So from a quarter of the population to nearly half in 6 very short years, US AVOD viewers. Hub Entertainment Research, their June 2021 research suggests that it's even higher. 95% they found of folks said they use at least one ad-supported TV platform. Paul, another driver here is Roku, Vudu, Crackle, IMDb TV. They've all started to commission original programming, focusing on documentary and comedy titles as well, notes George Winslow of TV Technology. So I think that's worth noting as well. Let's quickly talk about who these folks are. So Ampere Analysis was suggesting that AVOD viewers, they tend to be older, and that category is growing the fastest as well. 55 to 64-year-olds were the fastest growing age bracket of AVOD viewers. This is Ampere Analysis again. They're less affluent than the SVOD counterparts they found. And they also tend not to have lots of SVOD services, preferring traditional pay TV packages as well. Future Today and Variety Intelligence research shows that the main reason for using AVOD services was because of the free channels, then the content, and then the on-demand access. So, Paul, in your opinion, are these viewers that different?
Well, I mean, I think the Ampere research definitely points to an older demographic gravitating toward these AVOD services. And we should note that in a lot of these services, despite the fact that they're now commissioning original content, it's mostly about older shows and older movies that are licensed for these platforms or by these platforms.
Yeah.
So, I think there is a trend toward older viewers, but Ampere themselves have said that part of the reason that if you look at the streaming or the subscription video on demand, the SVOD services, the biggest growth area there is also older viewers. It's just that because AVOD services are growing faster overall, that trend seems more pronounced, but the demographic pattern is actually the same or similar across SVOD and AVOD. So really what we're seeing is, interestingly, more older people coming into this world, partly because a lot of them are cutting the cord. A lot of them are abandoning traditional linear TV services, and this is where they're going instead.
Finally, Paul, Kelsey Sutton of Adweek noting that in the next year, Fox plans to invest an additional $200 to $300 million in the company's growing streaming and digital businesses, including free ad-supported streaming service Tubi, which they own. But these ad-supported platforms operate with different strategies. Fox CEO Lachlan Murdoch explains, quote, "Let me be crystal clear about one thing. Tubi's original programming strategy is very different from the strategies of an SVOD streamer. We have no interest or plans in investing in high-cost programming to drive subscriber acquisition, as we are not in the subscriber business. We are focused on delivering programming that delivers total viewing time and enhanced monetization in very short order. The return on our programming investment is measured in weeks, not years," close quote. Is it fair for us to even compare advertising video on demand, AVOD, and subscription video on demand, SVOD, at all?
I mean, I think it's fair to compare them, but it's important to realize that they are different. And I think Murdoch nails it on the head when he talks about the kinds of content that an AVOD service is investing in, which is more along the lines of maybe like news and weather or things that are not as flashy and expensive and entertainment based, like the 1-hour dramas that you see on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu. So very different strategies. In a sense, they're all competing for viewers, but they are addressing very different parts of the market.
That's all we've got time for the first half. It's time now for the halftime report. Paul, hit us with a takeaway, please, from the first half.
The takeaway is that there's going to be more ad-supported viewing, largely because of the glut of subscription-based services. But as you pointed out, Marcus, both of these are going to coexist. There's an ebb and flow, and the proof of that is just how many services are actually applying hybrid models where they monetize both ways. So we'll talk about that more later, I'm sure.
Yes, indeed. That's all we've got time for the lead story. Time now for In Other News. First, quick word from our sponsor, Newstar. Are you prepared for marketing's next chapter? You won't want to miss Brave New Worlds 2021, the virtual marketing and analytics event of the year on November 9th and 10th. Join Brave New Worlds to learn how you can adapt to the forces redefining advertising. It's free, and you'll hear from today's top minds in marketing, data, and analytics, including executives from Facebook, General Motors, Capgemini, Publicis, and more. Go to bravenewworlds.newstar to register today. All right, folks, we are back. Today in other news. Can streaming TV players replace traditional TV ones? How SVOD services can reduce churn? And Disney Plus is considering an ad-supported tier. Story 1. Wayne Friedman of MediaPost writes that live streaming TV services have increased access, but acquiring viewers is a whole separate issue. He notes that live streaming TV players like Sling TV, YouTube TV, etc. haven't come even a little bit close to replacing traditional TV players. And Sling, the first real streaming TV service, launched 6 years ago. Today, just 10% of American households have a streaming TV service. 6 times as many still have the old school flavor of cable, satellite, telco, things like that, as according to our numbers. In 4 years' time, Paul, old school cable households will still outnumber streaming TV ones 5-1. Paul, can anything help live streaming TV services like YouTube TV, Sling TV sign up users at a faster clip?
I think they have the odds stacked against them because, first of all, they've had to raise prices so that it's now comparable to the traditional cable bundle, and people tend to kind of go with what they know. So if you're already on cable and you don't have a great incentive to switch over, then why would you do that? Plus, a lot of those cable bundles come with, discounts for your internet, or maybe if you still have a landline. So I think it is hard, and more of the kind of content that was originally sort of exclusive to the streaming platforms on the digital side is now available through other platforms. Like, for example, ESPN Plus carries a lot of sports, and so does, Paramount Plus and Peacock. So if people subscribe to those, they have less of a reason to buy into a more comprehensive package like a YouTube TV or Hulu with Live TV.
Story 2. Streamers won over viewers during the pandemic. Now they've got to keep them, writes Kelsey Sutton of Adweek. She points out that, number 1, time spent streaming has soared. In July, streaming video accounted for 28% of viewers' total TV times from Nielsen. Number 2, in early 2021, nearly half of US broadband households subscribed to at least 4 streaming services. That's from Parks Associates. However, folks might be ready to scale back. Nearly 1/3 of US online adults say they're tired of watching so much TV, and about 1 in 5 plan on spending less time watching as pandemic restrictions ease. That's from Forrester. Paul, your thoughts on streamers trying to reduce churn?
Well, one of the greatest attributes of these streaming services is also one of the greatest risk factors, which is the fact that you don't need to install any equipment and you can quit anytime and resubscribe anytime at no penalty. So that basically means that as more and more of these services come online and people start experimenting with them, people are going to be more willing to stop and start depending on seasonality or content, availability, their favorite shows and whatnot. So I think these services they're already having to work harder and will have to continue doing that to retain viewers. And part of how they do that is by staggering their release schedules, especially the services that have a lot of different offerings. They need to stagger them and basically think about not only how do we acquire new customers, but how do we keep them on our service year round.
Yeah. Talking about how to keep them on the service year round, Kelsey Sutton of Adweek noting that to reduce churn, folks are 1, putting out originals, 2, content for all the family, 3, working on bundles, 4, focusing in on recommendations, 5, seasonal marketing pushes, and 6, offering ad-free tiers. Seeing some churn does make sense, she notes, though, given folks were testing out new services, binge watching during the pandemic, and exhausting free trials. Ms. Sutton pointing out that Netflix, for example, lost 400,000 subscribers in the US and Canada in Q2 of this year. Story 3. Disney is considering bringing an ad-supported tier to Disney Plus, according to a Q&A with CEO Bob Chapek at a Goldman Sachs conference, notes Insider Intelligence analyst Nina Getson. She points out that an ad-supported tier could breathe new life into the service's domestic subscriber growth, which we forecast to slow down in the coming years after crushing expectations and reaching an estimated 96 million US viewers by the end of this year, 110 million next year. Paul, your thoughts on a Disney Plus ad-supported tier?
Yeah, I think it's only a matter of time. And the more mainstream the service, the more it's likely to have a hybrid pricing tier. Hulu has it. Warner Media is now doing this with HBO Max, and Disney Plus has been rumored to do it for a while. And it makes sense. I mean, these companies are all in the ad business anyway. So for them to pivot to advertising just really means some corporate realignment, but it doesn't mean a whole new thing the way it might mean for, say, a Netflix to go into advertising. So giving their customers the option of a lower price tier that has advertising is something that I think most people favor because they like choice and they like to save money. So to me, it's almost a no-brainer and only a matter of time before this rolls out.
Yep. HBO Max, one of those services you pointed out, will launch its ad-supported option $5 less than its ad-free tier. Nina notes that Mr. Chapek had called out that the company's experience with running addressable ads on Hulu and its strength in ad targeting, which it could bring to Disney Plus, marketers could take advantage of Disney's strong brand and the wealth of customer data. So yeah, it's not out of the realm of what they already do, Paul, to your point. That's all we've got time for this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening in. We'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, the eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar.